Hey everybody, I've got a new drinking game. I want you to go down to the comments section and take a drink every time an intersectional takes offense on someone else's behalf. Trigger warning.
And you can't see out the windows, and smoke gets in your eyes, and eyes just wanna cry, 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 cry.
Today I want to discuss whether intersectionality has a place in animal rights activism. Well, first let's find out what intersectionality is. Intersectionality is the interconnected nature of social categorizations, such as race, class, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. Now, it was coined by distinguished professor of law Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989 and was used as a legal term or concept to show the intersection between race and gender. As we can see here, the term now encompasses far more. Beyond race and gender, we now include things like religion, age, ability, education, sexual orientation, etc. Now, this in itself is a reasonable concept for humans, but you might notice how none of those categories represent non-human animal experience. And that's because our types of oppression do not intersect with theirs, but rather their oppressions is what we base ours on. Now, from the book Eternal Treblinka by Charles Patterson, once animal exploitation was institutionalized and accepted as part of the natural order of things, it opened the door to similar ways of treating other human beings, thus paving the way for such atrocities as human slavery and the Holocaust. As Aviva Cantor writes, nowhere is patriarchy's iron fist as naked as in the oppression of animals, which serves as the model and training ground for all other forms of oppression. By the way, what the animals are going through is a Holocaust. You can look up the definition. Intersectionals insist on being offended by this term because they think it's being compared to the Jewish Holocaust. Well, there were other human Holocausts. Sonia Say and Seb Alex do some great videos on this subject. I suggest that you go over to their channels and watch those. And humans have created these systems of oppression by first practicing it on other animals and then turning it on each other. There are many examples of this. One is just serial killers that start with killing small animals or using terms like treating someone like an animal. We don't say they beat that dog like a woman. Now, while we can most definitely address intersectionality and other forms of injustice in our everyday lives, it simply doesn't apply when we're speaking up against the injustice towards other animals. Non-human animals do not oppress or discriminate against us. So their ongoing oppression is completely their own, and it deserves its own recognition and movement. We're representatives, lawyers, lobbyists, and advocates for the animals during our activism. None of us need to be discussing our personal problems or affiliations while doing our jobs. A red herring is a fallacy argument that distracts from the original topic, and intersectionality is a red herring to the discussion of animal rights. Whenever human issues are raised in animal activist groups or events, tensions build, activists divide, and then the animals get completely ignored again. And that brings me to the topic of altruism. Now, Roger Yates is an English lecturer in sociology that specializes in animal rights. I have respect for his work for the animals, especially with the ALF, and even his regular discourse on his YouTube channel. However, when he speaks about activists that want to focus on animals only, he's like a broken record. The focus and the scope, the focus and the scope, the focus and the scope. And the gist is that the founder of the Vegan Society, Donald Watson, had a vision of veganism being the way for a better world for humanity. To be honest, I have been unable to find a lot of archives of Donald Watson's actual words or thoughts on this, or even his political or religious views. I can only go on a few quotes that I found. And there is even a website that disputes that he even meant it to be anything more than a diet. Now, I believe he meant it to be more, but I also don't believe he could foresee what it would become. And yes, veganism is a path to evolution, but I believe that evolution must be altruistic. And I don't believe it can be truly altruistic with a goal to help humanity. Altruism is a behavior that is intended to directly or indirectly benefit others, not the self, and at a cost to the self. Also, true altruism cannot be found in benefiting a group you belong to, and in this case, humanity or humans. Every year, about 80 billion land animals and 2 to 3 trillion sea animals are killed for a population of less than 8 billion humans, just for food alone. Now, if I had a crystal ball that showed me the future and I found out that my vegan diet shaved 20 years off my life or that human species didn't survive it, I would still do it because it's the right thing to do. And it's about justice. We've all seen the pictures of how the world flourished and started to quickly recover in just months while we were in lockdown. Imagine what the world could do without us completely. Within the animal rights movement, intersectionality tends to bring with it word policing and predicates itself on being self-absorbed and human-centric by telling people to be aware of whether they are more privileged than their fellow human. What the animals need is for us to be less politically correct in our language and more morally correct in our actions. And guess what? The whole human race needs to check their privileges compared to other animals. The animals we're speaking up for don't get a safe space. Pro-intersectional veganism asks the animal rights movement to turn their focus back on human rights yet again. The animals and their causes don't owe the human race anything. But if you ever hope to truly see human rights achieved, you owe it to yourself and your cause to be vegan.
We take their children. We take their freedom. We take their lives, sending them healthy and whole into a slaughterhouse to come out as packaged pieces on the other side. And we tell ourselves that somehow along the way, something humane and ethical happened.
And in the process, we harm ourselves.
The World Health Organization publishing a report this morning on the dangers of processed and red meat.
We destroy our environment, emitting through animal agriculture more greenhouse gases than any other industry, tearing down our forests and slaughtering our native animals to make room for farms. The world's cattle alone consume a quantity of food equal to the caloric needs of 8.7 billion humans. And yet 1 in 9 humans, 795 million, suffer from chronic undernourishment, and 844 million lack clean water, while 1,000 liters are used to produce 1 liter of milk and 15,000 liters for 1 kilogram of beef.
And yet we continue to justify animal agriculture by claiming that it's normal, necessary, and natural. That the animal kingdom or certain species within it are inferior to ourselves because they lack our specific type of intelligence, because they are weaker and cannot defend themselves. We believe that in our apparent superiority, we have earned the right to exercise power, authority, and dominion over those we perceive to be inferior for our own short-sighted ends. It is a justification that has been used before.
By the white man to enslave the black, or to take their land and their children. By the Nazis to murder the Jews. By men to silence and oppress women.
Are we doomed to repeat history over and over? Does this superiority complex, this pure selfishness define who we are as a species? Or are we capable of something more?